You're a fool.
Welcome, everyone, to the Racing Foolz podcast powered by Low Budget TV. I'm your host, Charlie Seungtai, and joining me is Tommy Mason.
Hello.
Well, folks, we got a special guest today. He's not only one of our coworkers, but he's also a really cool guy and an expert in drag racing, specifically the two-wheel variety. We'd like to welcome Jack Korpela to the Racing Foolz podcast. Welcome to the show, Jack.
Well, thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here. The only thing I'm scared about is I heard you say one of your sponsors is Low Budget TV. I hope you know we did agree to that $20,000 appearance fee for this podcast. Is that correct?
Yeah, we wrote some IOUs, so we'll be getting them soon.
Yeah, make sure to keep the big ones. Those are going to be worth a lot.
Thank you. I'll keep an eye out for that.
So for those who maybe have not seen or don't know Jack yet, if you watch MAVTV, you probably have seen him, or you will see him. Voice of Best in the Desert, voice of On the Edge, pit reporter for Luke's All Off-Road. Am I missing anything, Jack?
You've covered it. Whatever they need me to do, I will do, including sweeping the floors if I have to. And I mean that in all sincerity, just because my last stop, I come from broadcast news, which I love television, but didn't love ending up at homicide scenes and fires and tragedy every night. So I'm like you guys. I love motorsport and love working for this company. It's really cool to cover all these different forms of racing.
Well, you've been a very nice addition to the team and one who's adapted very quickly. Like I said, we have you work in kind of a lot of different forms of racing, but tell us about your background. I know you do drag race as well, but let's go back from the beginning. You grew up in Pennsylvania?
Yes, sir. I'm a Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania native, and I fell in love. Well, actually, to take you all the way back to the beginning, I hope this isn't too far, but my dad cursed me. He showed up to see me for the first time at the hospital on his Kawasaki KZ900, and he said he parked it right out in front, and I think ever since that day, I've been in love with motorcycles. I now own a Kawasaki KZ myself, which I love if you're into old classic muscle bikes. And that led to him taking me to a bunch of motorcycle drag races when I was younger. There was a huge East Coast race in Adco, New Jersey that we used to travel to from Pittsburgh. I think he took me for the first time when I was 4. And once I saw those motorcycles go down the track, I was hooked. And once I hit my teens, I begged my dad endlessly, we got to get out there and race. Spectating's fun, but he had some bikes in the garage that he had to park when kids came along. And I begged him to get him back out. And I remember one year we came home from Adco, and we spent probably 20 weeks in a row, Saturdays and Sundays, in the garage, getting his old 2-stroke ready to go. And, man, when we got that thing back out and took it to the drag strip, you could have told me it was the Super Bowl, it was the Daytona 500. I was that excited to just be a competitor at our local track, and that's really where my love for motorsports began.
So was it a thing, Jack, where you had already had a bit of a passion for motorsports before the trip to Atco and various other things, or was that really like the absolute? Was that where the bug bit you?
That's where the bug bit me, because I was so young. At this point, I was only 4 years old when they took me for the first time. So actually, my earliest memory is being scared to death of the noise, and I try to have that appreciation when we go do Lucas Oil off-road or we do any type of loud racing. I can tell the kids are enjoying it, but I always tell the parents, and I think back to my experience, man, the thing that my dad did for me that changed it was he got me one of the good headsets. After he bought me that headset, I was fine. But it's almost like, and you guys probably appreciate this, when you're little, those roller coasters sometimes weren't enjoyable. You had to grow up because the sensation was so much stronger and you're so light, you feel like you're going to fly out of the seat.
Yeah.
So racing was like that for a little bit, and that it was scary. But once you got those sensitive eardrums covered up, it was something that I really enjoyed. So I was always a motorcycle guy too, because my dad always had the bikes around. So then that opened the door for a lot of other areas of racing, particularly motocross and dirt bike racing. When I got into my teens, I couldn't wait to give that a try.
So was Atco your home track, or did you also go to like Reading and Englishtown?
Believe it or not, Atco was a 6-hour trip. That's just the mystique that this race had. It's a shame there's not too many motorcycle races like this one anymore, but you got to figure back in those days, this is long before Facebook. This is long before the internet. This is a race that you had to be at to experience. So it would draw guys from all over the world. The pits were packed. People like Elmer Trett, Dave Schultz, John Myers, all the top drag bike racers of the day were there. So we would always go to that. My local track was actually Keystone Raceway, which is still in existence. It's in New Alexandria, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
It's about 40 minutes outside of Pittsburgh.
NHRA raced there before, right? The national tour, I believe, or no?
Yeah, well, the track has a lot of history, and unfortunately, I'm not as educated as I should be on every factoid. But one thing they are known for, and let me remember this right, because I just spoke with Fast Jack Beckman at the NHRA race about it. I believe the first 6-second run was at New Alexandria Keystone Raceway, the Summer Nationals, by TV Tommy Ivo. And Fast Jack knows his history inside and out, so he backed me up on that one, because we were bench racing talking about Keystone. And it's also it had changed ownership, and it's owned by the Tedesco family. And they're the same Tedesco family competes with Mia Tedesco. That's someone who I think someday you'll probably see fall in the footsteps of Brittany Force and end up in Top Fuel.
Got it. So actually, it's funny that you mentioned Dave Schultz and John Myers, because I was going to mention how, for me personally, when I was able to start following NHRA, when I finally got cable, it was about the time, it was mid-90s, so it was about the time when it was the Dave Schultz, John Myers era. And so that was a very, cool time. And then obviously later on it became the Matt Hines, and then Angel Soul Sealing, and then Savoy, and then Sampé, and then, whatever last name is now. But, it kind of switched over to that era later on. But at the time, it was still Myers versus Schultz. Do you have any stories about that time period, or any memories of that time period? Because I know you actually posted a photo not too long ago on Facebook with a lot of cool diecast models, and I saw a couple of those bikes in that photo.
Yeah, it brings back such sweet memories. It's got to be one of the greatest rivalries, not only in the history of NHRA, but in the history of motorsports. Those two guys helped put pro stock motorcycles on the map. Just like I do, that it's rivalries and personalities that make this sport. And Dave Schultz and John Myers, they were just two of the absolute best. And both of them, just the utmost professionals. The thing about Dave Schultz that a lot of people will look back to, and somebody put it to me best when they said, I've never, ever seen Dave with leathers that didn't match, a bike in primer. He got the showman aspect of it, and that's why he had so many great sponsors. When he put a program together, he would put out just some of the best-looking paint schemes to where the carpet matched the bike, the trailer, the uniforms, his crew people. This is how you knew people were ahead of their time, is when you had your crew people wearing pants, right? A lot of people just say, just wear your jeans, wear whatever. These guys back in the 70s and 80s, they knew to have their crew people wearing the matching pants. That's how professional they were. So it was an awesome rivalry between those two, and it was heated. What makes a great rivalry is competitiveness. Like I come from the football world. I come from Pittsburgh, and Steelers-Browns was always the great rivalry. But then that rivalry meant nothing for about 15 years because the Browns were so terrible. It was a one-sided rivalry. Now the Browns are better, and it's hard to have a rivalry that's one-sided. With John and Dave, they were trading blows every race and were back and forth in the championship hunt. So it's awesome. And from a promoter standpoint, I can tell you, I knew the guy who gave me my first ever job announcing, Scooter Kaiser. He ran ProStar back then, and he said the 3 most popular calls he would get to ProStar would be, is Elmer Trek going to be there? Is Dave Schultz going to be there? Is John Myers going to be there? Those are the 3 most popular calls he'd get all day.
Yeah, actually, it's great that you mentioned the professional look of Dave Schultz's bikes, because, I mean, his Sunoco Hayabusa is one, I mean, it's still to this day one of the coolest looking bikes ever. If you've seen that bike, you know, like, you remember it. You can't, it's unmistakable that, you know, the bright yellow with the blue and the white. So we still remember him and revere him with a lot of respect, you know. So
and that shows you how ahead of his time Dave was. The reason Dave spent a lot of time in the wind tunnel, and the reason he went to the Hayabusa body wasn't to go quicker. It was because he knew that's what the factories wanted, and he was desperately trying to get Suzuki involved. That was right when the Hayabusa came out. And I look at things today, and I think it's a shame that NHRA hasn't made some more adjustments to figure out a way to make that Hayabusa body competitive, because apparently what I'm hearing from some of the teams is they didn't like it. The aero package wasn't great, and the TL1000 body is a lot better. But, you know, certainly, Suzuki's flagship muscle bike is the Hayabusa. It'd be great to see a few of them out there.
Yeah. Talk about I guess the pro stock bike class, and you know, you don't need to say anything that'll get you in trouble, but if you have any, if you have any, because, you know, let's face it, it's been the Harley show for a long time, and not necessarily because they're just better than everybody, but I don't think it's any secret that the rules favor at least, you know, the twins in general. And then obviously you have a little bit of a conflict of interest with Vance and Hines also being an engine builder for the Suzuki, or many of the Suzukis as well. So, I mean, like, you know, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people kind of not happy with the class. And what do you think could or should be done to you know, make it so where the racers feel they're on a more even playing ground?
You want the Jack Unleashed answer here? You want the
yes, we do.
We do.
No. We like to keep it real on the Racing Foolz podcast. So as long as you're willing to say it, I'd love to hear it. So
I'm gonna keep it real. Yeah. Listen, I see all sides of it. Let me preface what I'm gonna say by, if it wasn't for Vance and Hines, Terry Vance, there probably would not be a pro stock motorcycle class. They are the pioneers. They have always found a way to keep it going, and kudos to Terry Vance, Byron Hines, and everybody for attracting a factory, especially a factory as popular as Harley Davidson, to the NHRA. That is crucial. That is key. That being said, the situation that they have right now has to be one of the most unfair, uncompetitive, unsportsmanlike situations in all of motorsports. And I can't believe 15 plus years later, we're still talking about it. And the problem that I have is that in a category where everybody is supposed to have an open door and everything that is raced is supposed to be available, that's not the case and has never been the case. So I just think it taints the entire category. And I think anybody on the inside, anybody who's a true fan of the class knows that and understands it. I don't know if they're even worried about those people, because maybe the class isn't popular enough. I'll be the first to admit that if any of those pro stock motorcycle racers look up at packed grandstands in Pomona or Gainesville and think that everybody's there for them, they have officially lost it, because we know they're there for Nitro, they're there for the NHRA marketing machine, and pro stock motorcycle is a nice little side dish. But I guarantee you, if we went up into the stands with a microphone and did an opinion poll, we'd probably find out the vast majority of the people don't know the inner workings of the pro stock motorcycle situation. But for those that do, it's terribly unfair. And if I'm Vance and Hines, I would want to let competitors buy that so that your victories wouldn't be so tainted. Because here's the truth, and I would like to even tell this: Terry Vance, Andrew Hines, Eddie Krawick, all those guys, you could probably give Byron Hines a tricycle and he's going to beat the rest of the field on it, because the team is so talented, and they're the best. But when you're doing it on something that nobody else can own, that question mark is always going to be there. They're always going to have to answer for that. And I wish it's something that would just go away to make things more even. I mean, look at all the different forms of racing we cover. I couldn't imagine something like that in the off-road. Could you imagine next year, Lucas Oil Off-Road, Toyota comes out with a special truck that only one team can own?
Right.
I mean, could you imagine the outcry? And then they go on to win 9 championships with it.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't imagine, or excuse me, 10 now that they're up to, with Andrew winning that shocker in Pomona.
Well, the thing too is, what I kind of didn't like was, when Harley first came out, they actually didn't do good at all. They actually kind of got embarrassed, and I think that's kind of what put the pressure on NHRA to, like, hey, if you don't like change things to make this better for us, we're out, right? Kind of.
Yeah, the way the rules were written, and this is where I do give NHRA and anybody involved, whether it be Terry Vance or anybody, a whole lot of credit, because parity is decently, I would say, acceptable, considering the fact that you're dealing with 3 very distinct vehicles. On an even playing field, no way could a Harley-Davidson compete with an old-school 4-cylinder Suzuki GS tuned to the 9s. We just know that it's not possible. They're 2 different animals, 4 cylinders, 2 cylinders. So rule changes were needed. And I'm okay with the rule changes. I'm just not okay with saying only one team can have them. You had to give the Harley something, because you're right, Charlie. I remember back in the days when I think it was David Fizell who, before Vance and Hines got involved with Harley, he would always bring his machine out and he would be like half a second behind the field. But I bet that's where it started, because there'd be Harley fans going nuts for him.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted them to qualify because there's such love for the American-made brand.
Well, let's face it.
I think it's
and like, I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but let's face it. In the past, especially, I mean, it happens in every form of racing, but in the past with the NHRA, if you're a OEM sponsor and you sponsor events and you sponsor the TV coverage, you will probably get favorable treatment. I mean, another podcast I would love to do with somebody one day is talking about the Wayne County boys with the Dodge program and Pro Stock and the alleged nitrous that, may or may not have happened, which, and there's no way that NHRA was ever going to drop the hammer on them, even with suspicious explosions here and there. They were never going to drop the hammer on Dodge. But then when poor Jerry Eckman gets caught, in the pit lane with an exploded nitrous bottle, he gets banned for life and $100,000 fine, and like his career is over, So, it's no, and I get it. It's a business, we work in it. We understand there's politics involved, but just because we understand why it happens, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen, and and to a lot of people on the outside, they might not want to believe that. But there's a lot of stuff that happens that maybe is better off not being in the public eye, but it still has a major influence on what happens.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. Money is what rolls drag racing, motorsports in general. I think what's tough about drag racing, where I think money rolls drag racing even more than other sports, is I love drag racing, but one thing I don't love about it is, my example is, let's say tomorrow Castrol GTX wants to give me $3 million or an open checkbook. I could train Charlie and Tommy, and we could go test every single day in a Top Fuel dragster. And if we had enough money and we had the right crew chief, boy, in a couple of years, I could probably get you guys in the championship discussion, if not a championship. Just because if you do your job, if you have the right equipment, if you have the money, anything is possible. What other form of motorsport could you say that in? I draw the line, like, let's say Supercross. You could give me an
absolutely
open checkbook
not
from anybody.
No way.
I'm never going to beat Ken Roxon.
Yeah.
I'm never going to. I don't care. You give me $100 million. I'm never going to beat Ken Roxon. So the talent aspect of it is not quite as important. It's courage, consistency, being able to do your job, be the robot that you need to be in there in the cockpit, and have the right people and equipment around you, is what's going on in drag racing. Now, bracket racing, you can't say that. That's more of a talent driver sport.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, like, in that kind of, or in bracket racing, it's no surprise when you hear, oh, Jake Coughlin wins again, or Sean Langdon wins again, or a lot of these drivers that we know are just good drivers, they're always winning, and it's no coincidence. So,
Absolutely.
let's see, what else did I have on my? So I kind of didn't have any topics written down. We were just sort of winging it, but then I started writing a few things down. So let's talk briefly about the season finale, but then I also had to segue from that to something else. But let's just talk about that season finale. I mean, recently Pomona, even though, as you pointed out, the fans might not necessarily be there for the pro stock motorcycle class, but the last few years, more often than not, that championship is one of the most dramatic, and this year was no exception. I mean, if you had a movie script of what happened this year, I don't think even the movie executives would believe that this is a possible story, but it actually happened. So,
it sure did. So much so that, as a longtime veteran of the sport, it almost makes me raise an eyebrow. And I don't want to go down that road because, of course, I have absolutely no inclination or proof that there would have been anything that went on that was not wholesome. But, I mean, understanding the odds of what happened, that it is no exaggeration. That was a 1 in a million. Because if you think of the talented racers out there that can't or have never even made it past first round, we worked with one of them, Anthony Vanetti, a tremendous
our buddy.
racer.
Yeah.
This would be the same odds, the same likelihood of Anthony Vanetti winning a race on the most important day for the class.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to talk about, if you add things up mathematically, the chances of Andrew Hines going red with a championship on the line against an opponent that he should roll over. I mean, that's got to be one in 100,000 right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next round, Steve Johnson, who's been incredibly consistent all year. When's the last time you've even seen anybody break in that class? Johnson breaks. Then Matt Smith, with an opportunity to go win a championship, breaks.
Yeah.
When's the last time you've seen two pro stock motorcycles break consecutively?
And then to have
the same opponent. People tell me, like, oh, Matt's bike was puff and smoke all weekend. Well, and I'm like, they got bullets in the trailer.
Yeah.
It's an important run. And now I understand Gino Scali was the one, former champion. He talked to me and he was like, look, he's like, hey, sometimes you don't want to mess with things when you don't want to go change a bullet. And I get that. But then you get to the final, and this is the one that really has me scratching my head. All Jerry Savoie has to do is go down on the racetrack, and he's going to win a championship. And the thing, I don't know if I've ever seen Savoie's bike act like that in the burnout box, and I had no idea what happened to his bike in the burnout box. But at the end of the day, all raised eyebrows aside, it was a great day for Gianna. She did what she had to do. She didn't go red. She went down the racetrack. She didn't cross center line. She didn't crash. And it's just a special 1 in a million day.
I mean, when it's your day, it's your day. And I'm not gonna say now like, oh, it's a one-hit wonder. She could win more, but we've seen past instances, especially in drag racing. Drag racing, that's what's cool about drag racing. Like literally, in every other form of racing, they might say, oh yeah, as long as you're in it, you have a chance. Like, no, you don't. But in drag racing, you could be the number 16 qualifier. It doesn't matter. You have a chance. So
that's right.
To segue from Gianna, so she is the latest female drag racer to win a national event. And I want to go back, let's say 15 or 16 years ago. And so I've always liked racing, and if you're one of my friends growing up, you're going to have to listen to me talk about racing. That was just a fact of life. I didn't meet Tommy yet, so I was like talking about it to other people who didn't really care. But I remember telling one of my buddies, yeah, you should check out drag racing. It's pretty cool. And so this is when Angel and Antron were teammates, I guess, for the Army team. So that they were kicking ass. And he turns the TV on, and to his shock, in the final round, to us it's normal, but to a person who never watched a drag race before, he sees Angel and Antron in the final, and he's like, wait, the final round, it's a girl and a black guy. And like, I didn't really even look at it that way because for us who follow drag racing, it's kind of normal to see diversity. But in every other form of racing, not so much. Actually, before Lewis Hamilton, you didn't see, well, I guess technically Willa T. Ribbs had a test way back in the day in F1, but you didn't see any African or any black driver of any type in F1. You don't really, well, nowadays you have driver diversity in NASCAR, but in 2002, you didn't have that. You know, you didn't have Bubba Wallace, you didn't have Daniel Suarez, you didn't have Kyle Larson, you didn't have, you know, you had a couple female drivers try to make it, Shauna Robinson, but it just, and Patty Moise, but it just didn't really happen. But in drag racing, luckily, drag racing has always been ahead of the curve when it comes to inclusion with everybody. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. It doesn't matter if you're white, black, Asian. Kenji Okazaki got a funny car win. It doesn't matter. And it's, you know, I always feel like that was, you know, for, you might say like NHRA has a lot of things they got to fix, but diversity is not one of them.
No, not at all. You're 100% right. It's definitely the most diverse form of motorsports. And, you know, Angel coming aboard in 1996, the amount of attention that she attracted immediately was crazy. She was, I think, her first or second race, USA Today did a half-page spread on her back when USA Today was everything. It was the go-to media, and every talk show wanted her, every media outlet wanted her. It's amazing, and it's commendable. But I think that could tie into what you and I were talking about moments ago about how drag racing is so open to a lot of different people. And my counterexample would be, look at how bad NASCAR wanted Danica to be a superstar. I mean, they just prayed and hoped and pushed her so hard. But, you know, at the end of the day, no matter how much money she had or who the sponsor was, she couldn't get it done. Where it seems like in drag racing, there's just a lot more opportunity for a lot more people if you surround yourself with the right people.
Tommy, speaking back to Danica, do you think that in NASCAR's desperate attempt to catch on to the last few years of Danica Mania, they just basically rushed her along too much?
I think in my opinion, it was a thing where she was underdeveloped for a NASCAR driver. I mean, she's out there racing with drivers who literally grew up in the sport and have made their way up into the sport. Danica being, you know, a pavement racer, but also a European racer, an IndyCar racer, road racer, circle track racer. But she just didn't have the knack, the ability. Maybe I won't say ability. She just wasn't groomed into driving a 3,400-pound 900 horsepower stock car around the oval track with not a lot of downforce. Mm-hmm. And I feel like she's just behind on the years of training.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can't knock her too much because even though everybody likes to point to Tony Stewart, like, oh, well, Tony Stewart did it. Like, yeah, well, for every one Tony Stewart, you had a lot of Danica's, Dario Franchitti's, Patrick Carpentier's. You know, list goes on and on. I mean, Montoya did it too, but Montoya is also just a badass. You know, like the list of people that were able to pick it up from open wheel, it's a lot less than the other way around. You know,
you're right, and it's amazing to me that there hasn't been an ultra successful woman yet in the world of NASCAR. But thanks to our friends here at Lucas Oil and a couple conversations I've had with the General Brian Deegan, I am excited to see what Haley Deegan can do. She really has the pedigree and the talent. And I'll tell you, I was so happy to sit down and have a conversation with Brian at length because Brian is way different than I expected. People see this hard edge on the outside, this metal militia rocker. Let me tell you what, that man is a motorsports and marketing genius. He laid it out for me. He's got a 5-year plan for Haley. He refuses to rush her. He said already NASCAR is beating down the door because she's already one of the most popular drivers out there and hasn't even made it to the big show yet. But he said he will not rush her under any circumstance. He said he's gonna take his time. And I mentioned I already made the comparison to Danica, and this one crewman said, "Don't bring up Danica. He doesn't like that. He doesn't like that." He laughed at it though, and he said that because what I asked him is I said, this could this be the Danica that NASCAR always wanted? Meaning that could Haley be the Danica that wins? And he laughed and smiled, and I think that's the goal long term, and he believes it's possible, but he refuses to rush it.
And I think the great thing is that's kind of what we all hope for, not only out of Haley, but a lot of racers in her position too. It's because we've seen the rush, and that rush is not necessarily healthy at all, because you just get caught up and you really get put behind on the ball, where when you mature up through the ranking. Now, does she have, is she like a Kevin Harvick where, she was been racing late models for a lot of years? No. But she has groomed herself and her family and everybody around her to be, good on off-road, good on circle track, and look where she's at now. I mean, she's destined to be a NASCAR superstar, and we as fans, but also people who have seen the history, we're so happy to see that she's not running, an Xfinity or a truck. Obviously, she'd be a little too young for that, but also she's taking it one race at a time, which is fantastic, because rushing never seems to be a healthy thing.
I mean, we saw, you don't need to look very far, Tommy, just this year in the Truck Series with Natalie Decker. When you move up quicker than you should, you're now all of a sudden learning in front of everybody, and every time you make a mistake, those memes are ruthless.
Yeah, Danica got lucky that there is no memes when she was in the Cup Series. Yeah. But I mean, that speaks for a lot of people though too.
Yeah.
Because we've seen it in the past. I mean,
John West Townley.
Oh yeah. So rushing
what rushes people most often. I think what often rushes people is the money, chasing that seven-figure payday. Yes. The great thing about Deegan and the genius marketer that he is he's a monster athlete. He's got backing. He's got all types of sponsors. He's got his own YouTube channel. They've got streams of revenue that I don't think they need to rush that payday. They're not worried about it.
Yeah, and that's when you're in a situation where you don't need to just grab the money. It makes it a lot more easier for some people, and actually this is probably what happened with Danica, to be honest with you, when she got her IndyCar ride. I don't think she was ready for IndyCar, but when you were in her position, which is the same as a lot of people's positions, where, your family has put everything that they had to help you make it, and you're now on like the cusp of you might make it, you might not, and somebody gives you this opportunity that you might not be ready for, but it might be your only opportunity, you're not going to say no. You have to say yes, because if you say no, like if you say, I'm not ready for IndyCar, call me in 2 years, you might not get another phone call. So I think she was kind of put in a sink or swim situation by the IRL. They were in desperate need, because they were getting destroyed by NASCAR, and they were kind of getting beaten by Champ Car as well, and they needed something to boost them, and Danica Mania was it. And the fact of the matter is they threw her in an IndyCar, and she swam. She didn't swim great, but she didn't sink. And certainly leading laps and finishing fourth in her first Indy 500, I mean, that was the catalyst. That's the reason why she ended up extending her career as long as she did. That if she didn't do good at Indy her first year, Danica Mania might have been over just as quickly as it started. So she performed when she had to. And actually, I could do a whole nother podcast on this, but the fact of the matter is she was really good at flat tracks. I know a lot of people want to trash her, but she was good at tracks that weren't just flat out in a pack like Texas or Chicagoland or like the cookie cutter track. She was good at flat tracks. Indy, where she won at Motegi, Milwaukee. Unfortunately for her, a lot of those tracks got pulled from the schedule, so it's like, wow, the tracks I'm good at are all gone, and except for Indy. That's why she did decent at Indy every year, but that's a whole nother topic now. But I don't think Haley's going to have that problem. At least she will not be rushed too fast. Now, whether she'll adapt to what she needs to do, that remains to be seen, but everything right now has been going to plan, I would say. But, if she can make it, well, she will make it, but if she can succeed, then that's going to be huge for NASCAR. That might be the one thing that they've been needing to help, boost their whatever slump you want to say they're in. I don't think it's the end of the world like everybody else thinks it is, but, you know.
Well, they want it badly. You know that. I'll give you a funny inside Danica story, too. Jonathan Coachman is a good friend of mine who I worked with at WWE, and then he went to ESPN Radio, and he was very outspoken against Danica that, you know, she was all hype and just wasn't going to get it done. And then the year Danica went out and qualified on the pole for Daytona.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Coachman had Jimmy Johnson on his radio show, and he said that off the air, he told Jimmy, he said, well, I guess I better eat some crow. And the response from Jimmy was, don't eat too fast.
Yeah. I mean, because
that was kind of what the guys were thinking. I guess that was, you know, kind of how she was looked at by some of her peers.
Hey, guys, time to pay the bills. Here's a commercial.
When performance matters most, the pros trust Crown Performance. Constructed from Teflon, Kevlar, and stainless steel, Crown Performance brake lines exceed all industry standards, will hold up against the harshest conditions, and provide ultimate stopping power, whether it's for the street or the track. We offer customized sizes and colors to fit any application. Visit crownperformance.com to learn more. crownperformance.com. crownperformance.com.
So we're going to backtrack to your career, but let's go a little bit further. So apparently we were corresponding with each other like for a while before we even really knew each other and before we even worked together. So there was a time when I used to write press releases for people, and that included the Arana team who race in Pro Stock Bike. And so sure. I would write the press releases, I would send them out. And after every race, I would send them out to various places. And one of them was cycledrag.com. And so I would send them, and then you guys would post them. I didn't know you yet. And then so all of a sudden, flash forward like a year, I'm not writing press releases anymore. And in my email address history, I see a Jack Korpela cycle drag. And I'm like, is that the same Jack that works with us now? And it was. So,
isn't it funny? Small world, huh?
Small world. So, talk about your website, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, that's just been a labor of love that I help out on. Just, you know, give motorsports, give motorcycle drag racing more exposure. And I thought what you were doing back then was wonderful, and it pains me to this day to see that a lot of these teams aren't putting out any media. They don't have guys like you as part of their budget, as part of their team expenditures. A lot of people look at this as, oh, let me cut this instead of paying an accomplished writer a few bucks, which I just don't get 100%, because these teams are out hunting sponsorship and they have sponsors that they need to take care of. So they certainly remember to bring 3 engines, and they certainly remember to put gas in the generator and diesel in the truck, but they forget to write a simple press release, which every team should be doing after every race. And a lot of these teams think, hey, it's only if I go out and win a race. No, it doesn't. You could be out first round. This is about exposure for your sponsor. Let us know what's going on. People like us want to read about it. And that was what the philosophy was at Cycle Drag. That's what it was founded on, just giving exposure to motorcycle drag racers out there. And I wish more teams would get it. I tell you, it's a scary situation we're getting into with this sport, because I guarantee you, I think there's less people doing it at the end of the year 2019 than there were 3-4 years ago. And I don't know why. Is it because social media is so hot? I don't know, but to me, they go hand in hand, because you should be putting that stuff up on social media as well. And I see some racers out there that really haven't caught on to the fact that it's 2019, that aren't doing their due diligence on social media. I mean, if you have a sponsor, you got to be all over this all the time. And to get back to Dave Schultz, talking about a genius who got it a long time ago, I remember him in interviews saying, a lot of these guys, they go out and they try to get sponsors and they want to show their resumes and wins and losses and I need. He said, when you approach a sponsor, it is never I need. It is, here is what I'm going to do for you. Here is how I'm going to help you sell product. And Dave was so far ahead of his time. He had an extra trailer. He had a show bike that would go around to festivals. One time I saw him at the Pittsburgh Regatta, which is a boat show. But that is how, I mean, Dave, if Sunoco was involved, he had his trailer, his marketing guy, and his what they call it, the I forget what they call the bikes with a much lighter motor. It's just simply a show bike.
Like a show bike, right?
But,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a show bike. It's easy to push around, but I guarantee you that thing probably had 150 to 200 appearances one year, and that's how you help a sponsor. That's how you sell product. Those are all the things you need to do, and some racers just unfortunately don't get that.
Well, amen on that whole, media and press and everything else, because couldn't have said it any better myself. You don't even see that really in a lot of forms of either regional or national level until you get to companies that actually have a budget for it, even though there really should be a budget all the way. But this is where I want to know, Jack, because I want to know where your passion for broadcasting started. Was that something of a school, or was it even like a just a dream to become a broadcaster? Was this something that you've always thought to do? Was this like a last-ditch effort? Like where did the broadcasting come into Jack's life?
Wow, that is such a good question that, believe it or not, I've been asked so seldomly that I have to really go back through my memory bank and think about it. And the reason I have to think about it is because I have wanted to be a broadcaster for as long as I can remember. It has just consumed me. So I think if I went back far enough, I loved playing baseball when I was growing up, and just like any other, red-blooded American boy, when you're playing baseball, your dream is to be in Major League someday. So I think at about, I don't know, maybe 8th grade or so, when it sunk in that probably wasn't a reality. I had still, to that point, I had wanted to be a broadcaster just as bad as I wanted to be a baseball player, but that's when I decided to go all in. I had done some mock newscasts and some different things in front of camcorders, and it just seemed like I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I wanted to learn everything I could about television, and I wanted to go after it. So then this is a good example for anybody to follow your dreams, because what I heard the next 4 or 5 years in high school is how difficult it is, how small the percentage is to actually land a job in broadcasting. And that seemed to just fuel me even more. And what I did is I left Pittsburgh and went to the University of Florida, which I knew was a great school for broadcasting. And I didn't tell any of my professors this, or my guidance counselor. I can brag about it now because it worked out for me. One of the big reasons I went to the University of Florida was that they had 2 AMA Pro Star races a year.
Oh,
look at you.
Multitasking.
They had Gainesville Raceway.
Yep.
Okay, so that sounds irresponsible when you're 18. Why are you going to the University of Florida? Oh, because they got a drag racing facility 20 miles away and 2 of the biggest motorcycles. That sounds irresponsible. But my freshman year, I started in my broadcast program, and I also emailed the promoter and told him, sir, I've been following your circuit for a long time. He was the one that had the race at ATCO. I'm a broadcasting major. I've done some football games. I'd love to come out and volunteer my services for free for your big race. And I remember the guy emailed me back. I could still almost verbatim recount his email. It said, Jack, thank you very much. Normally I would not need your services, but in a fast-paced world, timing is everything. My number 2 just canceled on me. We don't have any extra budget, but if you're willing to come out for free, we'd love to have you and give you a tryout. And that was it. It was about a month before the event. So I rolled up my sleeves and just like I still do to this day, whether it's best in the desert or off-road, I just learned everything I possibly could, did all my homework, showed up at the race. I'm somewhat embarrassed to tell you this story, but I'm going to let it rip. I was so nervous the first time I picked up that microphone. I think I may have just a little bit wet my pants. Just a little bit. But was able to do a good enough job that the guy at the end of the weekend said, you know what, you did fantastic. I want to have you next year on tour with pay. So I was in college, and the guys offered me $75 a day to go out, and I was over the moon. I mean, at that point, it's like when you're 18, you go push the lawnmower around or work at Wendy's, or somebody gives you a chance to go on tour with a drag racing circuit. So I loved it. That was what really got me started, and I think that I tell some of the anybody who starts in broadcasting to go do it, go announce drag races, because I would go into the University of Florida and there would be kids that would be so nervous just reading a few lines, and I'm thinking, man, at the races they hand you a microphone at 9 a.m. and say announce till midnight, kid.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I know from the background that you guys have, you've been in similar experiences, and there is no better training when you don't have a teleprompter, when you're just sitting there watching the action, and I don't care if there's 10 people in the stands or 100 people in the stands, when you are tasked with ad-libbing endlessly all day, you learn so much, and you learn very quickly.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic to hear, because between the three of us, we at some point we've had to work for free to get our foot in the door, and if you want to make it in anything to do with any kind of media or TV, I mean, a lot of people don't want to pay their dues, but you're gonna have to do that at some point, So that's awesome.
Yeah,
here,
if you want to do it, you can't always chase the money. A lot of times it's about the opportunity and the experience. And that was my biggest thing when I was at WWE. A lot of people, how do I become a wrestling announcer? How do I become a wrestling announcer? And I'd be like, well, look, there's 5 wrestling jobs in the entire country. So if you're willing to do anything, and that was me when I was 18, I wanted to do racing, I wanted to do sports, but if somebody called and wanted me to announce a chess match or a ping pong tournament, I would have done anything. And that's the same advice I give people today is just, if you're young, if you're starting out, go get your experience, go do it, go work the mic. If you're not getting paid, well, get a few under your belt, and then maybe see if you can get a few bucks to pay for gas money. But you just got to get out there and get started.
Right.
Because if you're not in it just to get your name out there, you're not going to get noticed. And the good thing with your story in Florida, or like myself when I got started in the Championship Off-Road Series, or Tommy basically building his own company with Jeffrey, like, we all like racing. We all probably would have been there anyways, whether you were paying us or not, or whether we were working or not. So it's like, for us, it's like, oh, you want to pay us? That's even better. But either way, we wanted to be there. And that's kind of, I think you kind of have to have that attitude if you're going to want to try to make it without any outside assistance, because I didn't know anybody in the industry. It sounds like you didn't really know anybody in the industry either. And Tommy knew people in racing, but as far as media and TV, he was on his own too. So we all kind of had to make our own way, and that's just the way it is. So, you just kind of have to want it, I guess. And from hearing what you did, it sounds like a very familiar story, but it's definitely worked out.
Yeah, the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you guys and working for Lucas Oil TV, Lucas Oil Studios, and MAVTV, it's like I said, it's hard for me to have a bad day no matter what happens. I know at the last off-road, I think I had some of these races when we're doubling up, I got 27 arm cams, and I come back at the end of the day, I'm limping and I'm covered in dirt, and I'll tell you right now, there's just no place I'd rather be, because that's how you know that you're doing what you're meant to do. Because I wouldn't trade it for anything, and I certainly wouldn't trade it for being at an unfortunate roadside crash when it's 5 degrees in central PA. And you know what? There's a lot of people who, believe it or not, that have that news bug, and that's their off-road day that they love. But for me, it just wasn't that way.
So we've had you for almost an hour now. We're going to let you go soon, but before we let you go, so me and Tommy were big monster truck fans. We grew up in the 90s, and I was very excited when the other day you told me you worked with the Brett Kepner.
Ooh!
Can you believe that? We got to. Actually, we need to have Brett Kepner on the show. I can make that happen.
Yes, we'd love to have him.
I have his one of the most knowledgeable guys in the history of motorsports. He told me he has a file on his computer that he wants to make sure it gets passed on to somebody when he's no longer here, because he said that the thing has almost filled up his entire computer. I forget how many gigs this data file is, but it's insane, and he still follows everything. I mean, I've never met anybody in drag racing, and there's some great ones out there. I don't know if I've ever met anybody with that type of memory that could just rattle and hum off the top of his head. it's intimidating talking drag racing with the guy because he knows everything. I can kind of hold my own when it comes to bikes. Anything else, forget about it. I mean, he will just he will embarrass me, and he's that good. He's done it with monster trucks. He worked for Masters TV for a long time, and that's where I got my start in Masters. So
you worked for Masters too?
I worked. That's how I got.
You know that we get shows from them for Mav.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
It's awesome to see Ted Jones and everybody still in the business. If it wasn't for Masters TV, I'm not so sure I would be here because the drag racing announcing that I did led to my first big TV opportunity, which was through Brett Kepner and Ted Jones. They recognized my announcing at the track. They were filming a Pro Star race. They said, "Can you help me with the VO?" I said, "I would give my left arm to come help you guys with the VO."
Was this Inside Drag Racing? Or
this was Inside Drag Racing.
Yep.
And the next thing you know, Masters picked me up, and they're sending me to, back then, the SEMA show was in Atlantic City, New Jersey. That was my first, at least there were two SEMA shows, but one, the East Coast SEMA show was in Atlantic City. They sent me there for my first one. They sent me to Tunica, Mississippi for go-kart racing. They sent me to DeLand, Florida for a monster truck show. And I quote them all the time. I was just in Wheatland for a monster truck show, and I remembered something that they told me back in DeLand, and that is, if you see one of these tires come off, you better run.
Oh, yeah.
when you're down on the ground, those things, don't ever estimate how heavy those things are. And I was telling everybody around me, I say, look, hey, heads up, guys. We're down here on the ground. If one of these tires comes off, run. And there were a few that came off. Luckily, they didn't come our way, though.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, man. So was Brett a
guy
you that
definitely have Brett on there?
Yeah, no, we'd love to have that. I mean, and there's a lot of monster truck fans that follow Low Budget TV, so they'd love to hear that too. Was Brett a guy that you grew up watching the same way that we did?
Yeah, especially on drag racing. And I know, me being the motorcycle guy, Brett Kepner and Ted Jones filmed the beginning of Pro Star. Boy, that really brings this conversation full circle, which was the 1989 U.S. Motorcycle Nationals at ADCO, New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
So at that point, I'd already been going to the event for 5 years, and TV was even more magical back then because it was so it hadn't flourished like it did now. If something got on TV back then with such limited channels and such limited options, it was really big deal. So Ted Jones and Brett Kepner, and it's still on YouTube now to this day, they broadcast the U.S. Motorcycle Nationals because Ted used to be the president of the IHRA, and the way Pro Star started, it was going to be the IHRA motorcycle division. And that's really when I took notice of Brett Kepner, because I think I watched that video so many. I had a VHS recorded that I watched it so many times I wore it out. But I just knew that here's a guy that wasn't even known as a motorcycle guy specifically, but knew Elmer Tratt and all these legends inside and out. And it was cool watching him. He has the unmistakable voice. I mean, come on, one of the best broadcast voices ever, which may come from excessive cigarettes back in his day.
Could you imagine?
So I don't know if I want to go that route.
Yeah. Oh, man. There's a
you
number
want a funny
to
Brett
be
Kepner
guessed.
story?
Yes,
course.
please.
I'll tell you a quick funny Brett Kepner story, too. He's got the strangest diet I've ever seen in all of motorsports broadcasting. Okay, you're working with Brett Kepner. Breakfast is nothing. Lunch, nothing. Dinner, nothing. After dinner snack, nothing. The day's over. It's about midnight. Drive through McDonald's and spend about $38. And I joke you not, that was his diet. He always said that he never liked to eat when he worked. I don't know if it was a joke or not, but he said, hey, you don't want to be trapped inside a small announce booth with me after I eat. But that was the way he preferred to do it. I could never really, I'm the kind of guy where if I don't get my breakfast, I don't get my lunch, I'm going to get the shakes out there and be brain dead. But that's how he rolled.
Wow.
And that meal, I guess, at midnight was big enough to get him through.
Jeez. Wow.
Not that I recommend that for anybody. I don't know if that's the healthiest meal.
But we all know through racing that when you're out there at an event, eat a big breakfast because you're not getting it at dinner till midnight.
Yeah.
So.
don't count on it at least.
Yeah,
so.
that can be the way it goes. That's absolutely that's what I work with. The cameraman that I work with now, Ken Cavalli at Off Road, who's amazing. All the amazing shots you see are thanks to him. Guy takes a poor jabroni like me and makes me look like $1 million. But anyhow, he's smart. He's got food all over the place. You know, he's got granola bars in his pockets and cooler in the UTV because he knows that we might not get a break, and a lot of times we don't.
Yeah, Ken's a good guy. I mean, we work with a lot of good camera guys, and Ken's definitely one of them. So, well, I mean, we're definitely gonna have another podcast because you mentioned some names like, Elmer Trett. I mean, you mentioned Gino Scali. I'm like, oh man, whatever happened to him? So, you mentioned some names that just kind of reminded me of growing up watching motorcycle racing, and it was definitely nice chatting with you, Jack.
Absolutely,
a lot of great
these men are
stories.
far more interesting than me. So I will feel free to. I can open up my Rolodex to you, and we'll get you if you want. If you want a Brett Kepner or Gino Scali, let's try to get them on the show. And Larry, you got to get my man Larry Spider-Man McBride on. He's like a second father to me. World's quickest motorcycle racer. Just rotated the earth with a 550. 264 on two wheels.
Yeah, those top
It'd be
fuel
a great
bikes.
Guest for you.
Those top fuel. I mean, if anybody who rides a top fuel motorcycle, something is wrong with you. But and it seems like every time I see a post, he's setting a new record, which is like, wow, like how does he keep doing that? So, but no,
keeps on pushing that envelope.
No, fantastic to chat with you. I mean, it's just nice to just kind of get to know you more too, because we worked with you for a while, but it's like there's a lot of people, and honestly, this is one of the reasons why me and Tommy we wanted to do this. It's everybody's got a great story, and let's get it out there. Let's have people learn about people's lives and their stories, and so and you're definitely one of them, So I'm glad to talk to you, glad to work with you, and thanks again for taking the time to chat with us.
Amen. Likewise, guys. Really appreciated it, and I hope anybody listening to this understands that you two are, you guys are on your way to becoming Brett Kepners. You guys certainly in this building. If we have a motorsports question, a trivia question, they say go ask Charlie and Tommy. So, kudos to you guys.
Well, I really do appreciate that. As far as becoming the next Brett Kepner, maybe Tommy and Jeffrey. Not really me. I'm more of a behind the scenes guy. I
heard Tommy has a similar diet, so.
Well, I do. Yeah, I was just gonna say that's not too unusual. It's just it's a lot more In-N-Out, not McDonald's.
Yeah.
I save my money throughout the day to splurge at the end. So.
Very nice.
All right, man. Well, thank you, Jack, and we appreciate you, and we'll see you around the halls.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Take care.
Yeah.
So that is the Jack Korpela. Some of you may or may not know him, but you'll know him soon.
Yeah.
This guy has learned how to hit the ground running here at Lucas Oil and MAVTV because we kind of just threw him out there and said,
have at it.
Luck.
Yeah. I mean, because literally last year, it's like, who's going to voice Best in Desert? And it's like, oh, we'll get Jack to do it. And I'm like, okay, that might work. And then, but he's done a fantastic job. I mean, he's done his homework. He's learned the sport, and I think he's doing a great job. So, no, like I said, fantastic addition to the team, to the company, and I think he's well on his way to wherever he wants to be.
And secondly, he's just good to have roaming the halls with us too, because just chatting with him anytime we meet at the water cooler or anything else, he's always got, again, some stories to talk about. And that's kind of just, I feel like exactly like you, like just this long hour conversation, we've just hit the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Like he's got some stuff that we got to shake it out of him. Maybe we just need to have him literally in here. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that it was such a great warm up to Jack. We're going to have to get some more stories.
Yeah, no, this will not be the last time that we have Jack on the podcast.
I feel like we just moved the top layer off.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. And that was great. And hopefully everybody enjoyed it.
Like Tommy said, I hope everybody had fun listening to this. I know maybe a lot of people that usually listen or watch low-budget TV are not really the biggest drag racing fans or motorcycle fans, but there's a lot of great stories out there, and we just want to find them. So hopefully you had fun listening to this. We have a lot of fantastic guests in the works. So this was just one of them, and we hope to do many, many more. So for Tommy Mason, I'm Charlie Seungtai, and you've been listening to the Racing Foolz podcast, powered by Low Budget TV. The Racing Foolz podcast is produced by TQ Media House in association with Low Budget TV. Special thanks goes out to Tommy and Jeffrey from Low Budget TV, Kelly McGuire for the free mic and mixer, and Ramon Ariola for helping create various show elements. Music is provided by RFM, royalty-free music in the YouTube audio library. If you like what you hear, give Low Budget TV a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what you think. We welcome all questions, comments, and ideas, and who knows, maybe your idea will be the next topic on the Racing Foolz podcast.